Okay, good morning and Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you to all of you who are following and listening. I know we don't have many followers yet, but we've got some pretty loyal, cool followers. So, my name is Joan Jack, and this is Brave Indigenous Conversations. And today I have a guest with me, of course. I don't like doing monologues. And Shannin will be introducing himself in a bit, but I always begin by reading this beautiful piece of writing that I found when I started the podcast. Um, I believe in God and I believe in our ancestors and the spirits guide me, and I've learned to listen to the direction over the years and started the podcast, and I called it Brave Indigenous Spaces. And then I found this poem. I'm going to read it now. An invitation to a brave space. Together we will create brave space because there is no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars and we have all caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard everywhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and to continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side. Mickey Scott B. Jones, who's gone to the spirit world, a Black woman, wrote that. I don't know when, but I love it. All right. I'm going to shut my phone off so that we can not be interrupted.
Oh, I should turn
And
mine off too.
yeah, do that. Otherwise, for sure, kids call, people call, and it's like, I hate to ignore
Yeah.
people. Okay, so I'd like to invite Shannon to introduce himself. And can you please say your last name? Because I think I know how to pronounce it, but I'm not sure.
Getche it's Joan. Getche menendin. E beche with beche pagetnagoyan beche wichtayan with the mat dotaik tante duchagatek in a noaski teke Pambanetason. Esce no gestano che esce que minomata sanano che o gestano pambanetason. Bistaba con doci in chana mata tovan de snaka son o muskego gen no egan o she hofo hoigiwan. So my name is Shannin METATAWABIN. I'm from the Muskegowuk Innunuik, northern Ontario. It's also referred to as Cree or Muskego Cree. I come from a long line of people that have always been entrepreneurs. My grandfather was a fur trapper, probably one of the last ones in our region, and he raised his entire family by but with that economy.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad, he's a longtime advocate for the residential schools, Edmund METATAWABIN. He continues to have a business up north. He's former chief. He was an actor. He was, he's an author. He has a book called Up Ghost River that details his experience as residential school and provides some guidance on how to live in a good way and sort of go down the red road, which helped him in his life recover from the sitting in a in an electric chair and eating his own vomit that he was forced to do when he went to residential school. So it was his truth telling about those things that happened and bringing everybody together in the early 91, I believe, is when he brought all our people back. And we come to realize that it was one of the most notorious residential schools with that electric chair and multiple people actually sitting in it. Um, but that book really taught me a little bit about our family. I highly respect my family. I know that we got some trauma in our community, in our family, and in our community, and I was raised that way, and it gives me a certain perspective of looking at our community, and we're raised with the worldview of Kwachi, which is the health of our neighbor determines the success of our future, and I truly believe that, and that's why we were on a board together. I'm always looking for ways to make sure that our people are 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 doing well. I'm the CEO of the National Aboriginal Capital Corporations Association, working on my 8th year, and I'm trying to make sure that our Indigenous businesses have everything that they need to be successful. So that's a little bit about me.
Beautiful. That's so awesome. I'm not fluent in my language. I can get by. Like I can ask you, Ante Wenjian, Ginoon Deskate, where you from? Are you hungry? Like
Hmm.
kindergarten kind of Anishinaabe. And it's hard to translate. Like sometimes when I know enough to also pray a little bit. And
Hmm.
I find that when I speak, and then it's really hard to translate. But can you just share for our listeners, because you're Cree, like you said, a little bit of what you were saying? I could feel the beauty of your words. People say the internet and Zoom and all this doesn't work. I don't know. Maybe they need to wake up some more, because I can feel you, even though I can see you and I can feel you and I could
Yeah.
feel your words. So what were you saying? I understood a little
Well,
bit because there's some similarities in our
I
languages.
I essentially was just saying that thank you for the opportunity to speak and to share and to talk about business and our people, giving them an opportunity to create a good life for themselves. And
Mm.
where I'm from, the territory that I'm from, and the family and the community that I represent.
Hmm. So let's just jump right into that. I was really happy when you were willing to come on, because I too come from a long line of business people on both sides of my family. On my father's side, he was an immigrant from Lebanon. His father was an immigrant from Lebanon and a trader, a fur trader. So my favorite picture is one of me about, oh, I don't know, I'm probably maybe 6, and I'm holding a muskrat by a Christmas tree, and my dad is crouched down on his knees, squatting. You know how the people up north squat a lot, the men squat a lot? He's squatting there, and we're counting fur. And so I grew up on the other side of that. And on that side of my family, Grandpa Alex had stores in Manitoba in several communities and ended up settling in Little Grand Rapids, where 12 children were born, and all delivered by the medicine woman in Little Grand Rapids. And so in 1934, when Dad was born, there were no, nobody speaking English really. So
Mm.
my dad and his brothers and sisters all assimilated. So my dad was super fluent in Anishinaabe because from a child, eh? And then on my mom's side, my mom's family comes from Kawasis First Nation. And my cookum, after finishing residential school, she was, oh, the family story is that she was such a good worker, but I don't know. I could share about that in a different way, but whatever. Was such a good worker, they moved her to Barons River to look after the priests and brothers and nuns and do laundry and cook and be basically a housekeeper. I don't even know if they paid
Hmm.
her. And that's where she met my grandpa. And that's where my Indigenous identity comes from, is from my cookum from Kawasis. And then my grandpa married my mom's dad. It's complicated. They married back in. So I'm related to the Goosehead family in Barons River as well. Are all my relatives. So, and who we are is really important. And we've always been business people. Like on the one side, we had our people living off the land. And when what we were doing became of economic value to the settler population, it was a perfect match for a while.
Hmm.
And I mean, I'm sure there were troubles. I'm sure there were troubles. You hear
Oh
the
yeah.
story
Oh yeah.
about the pelts, gun deep, and all that. But
Yeah.
there were also very. It was a time of independence. I think that's what I want to know if you'd
Hmm.
talk about, because "Gidebendes," you probably say that in Cree too, like you own
Hmm.
yourself. "Debendesumen." And I loved what you said, that my health depends on the health of my neighbor, and that is our worldview, you know,
Hmm.
completely. If my community is not doing well, I'm not doing well, because I am my community. I'm not just a free living chick in the globe.
Yeah. Yeah. You know,
So talk about independence and in the context of Indigenous business.
I think the one story that I got from my dad's book when I read it is my grandfather. He was highly independent. He never relied on anybody. He worked out in the bush and he spent lots of time out there by himself. And
Mm,
I feel so fortunate that early in my life, when starting from 9, after we moved from Edmonton to back to the community, that I was able to go out in the bush with him and spend weeks uh,
mm,
and months with him out in the bush. So you're learning from your grandfather, and there's no safer place that you can ever be than sitting in a tent, and he's getting up in the morning and you pretend to be a little bit asleep, so he'll get up and he'll
Make the
start the
fire.
fire. He'll make the fire at the foot of your, right where your feet are, and then he'll make the tea and get it all, and then you get up and the tent is so warm. Like I always reminisce about the best time in my life, and that's really it. And he has the fresh boughs on the floor so that you have the smell of
Mhm.
the pine in that when the warmth, and when it warms up, it starts to the aroma is amazing. But he
Mhm.
uh he he always considered, the Northwest Company. There's that company that took advantage of our people
Mhm.
through for many centuries. But he never considered that he was always feeling that he was the owner of that, because he was the one that was getting a credit, but he always paid down his loan on that cycle of trapping that they do, where they have to buy, they make their pelts, they
Mhm.
come back, they pay it off. So he's always remained independent. And the only time that they really felt that they were beholden to everybody was when the system of residential school forced everybody to put their kids in there,
Yeah.
and they started to take the credit away, and started to
Mhm.
say that you can't attend church and your social functions. Everybody just sort of ostracized you, and you kind of sense that sort of that pressure with the pandemic that we went through. I just can't imagine with the residential school, and the people that they had searching for the kids, and camps that were out and where they were trying to hide their kids.
Yeah.
But my grandfather was very independent, and my family has always maintained that independence. We're always going to work for ourselves, and he was the chief that resisted the whole social check
Mhm.
that started it. He foresaw that once you start that, then you're going to lose this whole mentality of work, because back in the day they used to build a house in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Everybody would come together like the Amish people come together. Our native people used to come together back in the day and build
Yeah.
somebody a house if they wanted it, right? Because we
Yeah.
have we have the trees right in our backyard, and all you have to do is cut them down. And I
Yeah.
remember one of the last trips that we took together. My grandfather and my grandma had picked them up when I went back to the res, and we'd go for a ride around the community, and they'd be able to talk. And I got
Yeah.
some of those things on YouTube for the family. But they would look around and they'd say, "Look at all these trees growing up, and the weeds and the ditches and everything." They said that never looked like that.
Mhm.
Everybody had pride in the community and how they displayed it. Everybody would cut everything down, but everything's overgrown.
Yeah.
So we've really lost that independence with the dependency on the government, and we
Mhm.
got to sort of balance out our rights and title and our access to have prosperity from our own territories, along with recapturing our our need our worldview of making sure our neighbors are healthy and safe.
Yeah, totally,
Mhm.
totally. I can totally relate. Yeah, I'm now, well, 31 years now. I've been married to Watsait, Brian Jack. He's a Tacker Tlingit Wolf Clan member. And Brian is so skilled in so many ways on the land. And one of the things he can do is he builds stand-up log cabins, like where the log is standing up
Mhm.
instead of
Mhm.
down, eh? And
Yeah.
so, I think it was 2003, I was missing home, eh? So I said, "Let's move home." And then, I said, "I want you to build a house for us," you know? And, people were skeptical, at home. People were like, "Ah, whatever. What are you doing over there?" And all of that. And I said, "People will come." And you know who came? The poorest people came. The poorest people came, and I would make a big pot of soup and bannock, and we'd all laugh and work together, and then other people donated like old windows for our house, old patio door, old kitchen cupboard. Like we saw one guy was getting a new house. He just passed the other day, actually. He was getting a new house, and so I said to Brian, "You better go and ask him what he's doing with his cupboards before they demolish that house, eh?" And so Brian said, "Okay." So he went, and here he come back with all those old cupboards from his house, and we put them in our house. And yeah, everybody worked together, and it was really wonderful. And in my bid for leadership at home, I was trying to bring that back that independence, that especially around housing, that that we could build our own houses. Like my house is
No.
beautiful in Barons River. It's still there. My nephew lives in it, you know, and it's just not the stick frame house. And I think we probably bore it on top of all of our labor, maybe $50,000 for like the
Mm,
the the metal roof and the furnace, the hot water tank, the toilet, like the more modern amenities that we wanted in the house. Yeah, it was less than I've borrowed from my truck. So
unbelievable.
yeah, yeah, and people could do that. What your family did and what all of our families did that. And so for those of us not living in urban centers, that's really possible. But I don't know. I don't want to blame anybody, and it's not as simple as pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. But something has to happen. Something has to happen. So what is it that your organization is up to then, in relation to independence for our people?
Well, NACA, the National Aboriginal Capital Corporations, was established more than well, it was 27 years now, but
Wow.
the Indigenous financial institutions more than 35 years. So
Hmm.
they've been lending and providing loans to Indigenous people all across Canada. So there's 58 of them from coast to coast to coast. Uh, so we're way up in the north. In your region, it's Denene Ventures with
Yeah.
Elaine Chambers. So she's been providing the lending up in the Yukon, and I'm looking forward. I'm going to be there in June, end of June. So
Oh
I'm going to have
boy.
to come and visit you.
Well, you'll have to
Uh,
come all the way to the camp because we're going to be in the bush. But you could chop her in.
well, I'm trying to bring ministers and other people that make decisions on support so that they
Oh,
can see and feel Indigenous business and experiences, because up
yeah,
there it's going to be a lot of tourism, right?
yeah,
And that's exactly what you're providing, is that
yeah,
experience. So that's
yeah.
going to be important. So I'd love to be able to look at trying to do that. But we in the past 7 years, so I've been here 7 years, and I've always felt that uh, I used to work in this business before I met you. Actually, I was used to be a business service officer before I went to Vancouver,
Mm.
chasing
Mm.
love. and and so I'd give out loans. I helped about 250 to 300 businesses by
Mm.
providing financing. And so this network has been very important to our people, and the programs and services that enable that capital to get to our people. So by buying down a little bit of the risk, but the loan value, by giving a little bit of equity, or doing the training, or doing marketing, business planning and capacity, all those things that are important for a business, they've been doing that for more than 35 years. So
Mm.
they've they've done $3.3 billion in lending to more
Wow.
than 53,000 loans,
Mm.
and but they've always lacked capital. So when I got here, their first job that they told me is get us more capital for our
Mhm.
network so that they can take advantage, because the situation was they were waiting for loans to be repaid before they would issue and approve new loans. That's how lacking of capital they had. So they said, put together a strategy to get more capital, and we tried the old standard approach. Go to the government with a good business case and let's try to recapitalize everything. Well, they don't do that anymore. So we looked at creating an institutional grade investment tool that the market can recognize, and so it gives the private sector an opportunity to put money into the network.
Mm.
So we created the Indigenous Growth Fund, and that was officially launched a couple of years ago. And it took a little bit of time to get going,
Well,
but it's the
Shannon,
first.
I hear you talking, but I don't understand the words. Like, what do you mean Indigenous Growth Fund? And where does the money inside that fund come from?
So
Is
this
it
is what I'm
like
saying.
is it like venture capitalism? Like if somebody's an investor like that, or what is that?
Okay, so we created a fund. So it's just like a bank account. You open up and have a place where you can put money, and
Mm.
we called it an Indigenous Growth Fund. Now, to attract the private sector, you have to give them the understanding and the rules in which they're going to put their money in, and have a return on their income, or
Mhm.
make some money from their
Yeah, yeah.
investment. And they also want to buy down the risk. So what's important when you're creating a fund is to make sure that you have some equity or for your own in there. And the way that we got that equity is through a government program So they put in $50 million. And they're kind of tying it through this other program that they announced later on, which is called the Social Finance Fund. But it is essentially an Indigenous sort of social fund that we're in the globe right now. There's so much capital out there, and they're looking for a way to get into the community because it's an untapped market, right? So we're creating these connections that allows the market capital to understand where they're going to put their money and when they're going to get their money back. But at the same time, they're going to see it goes into the community, and there's a social impact from that capital that they're putting in there. So we created this capital, this Indigenous Growth Fund is what it's called, and the government put in 50, Business Development Bank of Canada put in 50, EDC, Export Development Canada put in 35, and Farm Credit Canada put in 15, and then we got a private placement of $3 million from Square or Block, as they're known, the payment system. And then that's the start of that fund. And now it's up to our IFIs who take loans from that fund, because we have 58 of them, and some of them are at varying levels of needing money. So
Wow.
those that need money are able to take a loan from that fund. So now they have it in their IFI, and they have their businesses in their communities that need that money. So now they
And
can issue
that
loans.
and that money that the individual, the Indigenous business receives represents that person's capital into their business, or what?
Well, it's a loan. So the IFI will give them a loan. So that
Okay.
business will take out a loan from that
Okay.
IFI. That
So
IFI is an Indigenous financial institution.
okay, I'm just trying to get it straight in my mind. I want to start a business.
Mm,
I need $100. I don't have any money at all. I just have the business idea, and I can do what I'm saying I can do. So
mm,
the bank, the regular banks would say, okay, you need to have, out of $100, you need to have $20 of your own money. And I'll be
yeah,
like, I don't have $20.
yeah. So,
So
so
how?
the historical system has been the bank system, and our people have historically received no's all over the place
Yeah,
because we don't have generational wealth, we don't
yeah,
have credit bureau,
no,
a history. We're not placed right beside the city where there's a market. We're usually
yes.
in the reserve somewhere. So there's a whole bunch of barriers that prevent us from receiving those yeses from the banking system. So they created the IFI network, and the IFI network bases their decisions more on a social relationship with our people because
Mm,
they've watched people grow up in the community. They know the chiefs. They know most of the board members from those from the IFI. They come right from the community. So
mm,
we're very grassroots, and
mm,
uh, when they make their decisions, they're basing it on a different set of criteria. But you
mm,
do need some equity when you get a loan. When you get a
mhm,
loan, you're going to have some of your own equity. But then we also have um, a contribution that comes through a government program to make sure that that loan is a little bit less, so that
mm.
there's a little bit less of a stress for the Indigenous entrepreneur. And that's been in place for about 35 years, and it's allowed a lot of Indigenous businesses to be successful because
But bottom line, you still need your own $20 in my
you,
example.
yeah,
Or maybe
you'd
it's
still
10, maybe
need
it's down to
listen,
10.
listen. Yeah. So be less.
Okay.
So you do need to come with some equity, and how that is understood is you work that out with the IFI. So
Yeah.
if you're coming with cash and other assets and all those kinds of things,
Yeah.
you'd have to demonstrate that you're serious about it,
Yeah.
and that's what everybody has to really think about is, are you
Like, for
serious about starting?
example, we have like if we're doing something on the lake and we have a boat already that we're using, a good boat, we're using it for hunting and other things or whatever, our boat could serve as equity. It could be put a dollar value on it, and that goes towards our showing that we have some skin in the game, as they say.
Well, the thing about the financial institution network is each one of them is independent. So
Oh,
there's no standard criteria around all of them. You need to have that discussion with your financial institution. They do prefer you to have some cash to put into it because usually the cost that you're looking to finance are things that you need to buy anyways.
yeah,
That boat is important to show that you're serious about the
yeah,
business, and then that's going to be in there. So
yeah,
that takes you down the line of of demonstrating that you're serious about the business and you're bringing all you have to the business, but you still have to have cash.
So we're not getting away from, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, Shannin, but we're not getting away from the idea of it takes money to make money.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
so
Yeah, you just have that skin in your game.
yeah, this is not like another um, social program per se. This is a space where Indigenous people who are business minded can put their business plan together. There's probably help to do that, and then save up their equity, and then have a rollout plan. Like, we're going to have our equity saved up in 3 years, and this is our plan, and we're going to go because we're business people. So it's like,
Exactly.
okay, I got
So
it.
this is sustainably set up for
Yeah,
35 years. These like they were when they originally were capitalized, they weren't capitalized to succeed. I got to tell you, there
yeah,
wasn't enough capital per institution in order to make money to cover their costs. It was set up to fail, but they've been in business for 35 years, and they've been able to find a way to make it work, mostly because we have a really specific market. And the
yeah,
market, each of one of those community members, they feel invested into that organization. So it's like a cooperative. They feel like
mhm,
they're owners. So
yeah,
they give out their business to that IFI, and it's a relationship that they have. The repayment on all the loans is 97.7%, probably
wow,
the highest in the world, even
wow,
higher than some micro lending. And that's
yeah,
the relationship, right? That shows
yeah,
that Indigenous people really take it seriously. It's like your auntie will kick you in the butt and say, "Go pay back that loan because
yeah,
that's there for our kids," right? So
making a problem for
that's the
all of
under
us.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. This sounds very different than my experience with federal government, Indigenous, money. I remember in 2003, I started Joan Jack Law Office, and I just did it because that's what I decided to do. And then I thought, oh, I should try to get some help because I want to expand and I had ambition and whatever. And then there were all kind of rules. Like, I had to slow down what I was doing in order to meet the criteria of the government funding place that I had gone. And it was like, you know what? I'm too busy trying to make money here. I can't be, for the
Conditions.
for
Yeah.
the small amount of money that you're going to give me, I'll make that in the next 2 or 3 years, like whatever. And it
Yeah.
just doesn't sound or feel like that anymore. It's not like that. It doesn't sound like it.
Our Indigenous financial institutions have a lot of capacity. They've provided a lot of loans. I know I did 250, and I was able to sit down with an entrepreneur and know if they were serious or not, or if
Mhm.
their idea was realistic or not, or they needed to
Mhm.
go back and do a little bit of more work. So there's a lot of that cheerleading and that capacity development
Yeah.
that I did a lot at the beginning,
Yeah.
but they would line up. Those projects would
And
line up, and they'd all ask for capital almost at the same time. So it was really nice to see.
And then I have another question about is the is the in what did you call it? Indigenous Growth Fund, IGF? Is that what it is? Or
IGF, Indigenous Growth Fund. Yep.
Indigenous Growth Fund does that only consider for-profit initiatives, or does it also consider nonprofit initiatives, Indigenous initiatives?
Well, we're all business.
Mhm.
So as long as it's a business entity, our IFIs would consider the loan. So
Mm,
it's got to be considered as a business. There's a new
mhm.
program coming out through the government called the Social Finance Fund, and they're looking at social purpose organizations, so more nonprofits trying to make some money on the side to support their operations. Uh,
Mhm.
and that's another category of support that's been recognized. But we're trying to have our Indigenous financial institutions understand the needs within their network so that they can direct the
Mhm.
needs to the proper financing source. So
Mhm.
hopefully we understand all the needs in our own backyard so
Mhm.
that we can help them out.
Mhm. Yeah, I have some other ideas that talk about maybe another time, but around that other element of it, like the whole, well, maybe we could talk about a bit of it now, like the whole cultural tourism piece. You know, everything's a story in our world, eh?
Yep,
When
yep.
I first because you have to and I've understand about who I am as Indigenous, I have to cite my source all the time. So I'm not Chinandagos, I'm trying to be too important, eh?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was watching the Olympics, literally, I was watching the Olympics when they were in Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish territory a few years ago. I was in Manitoba and I was sitting there watching the Olympics, and my husband and some of his other people were a part of the dancers that were on the floor of the Olympics. And I don't know how long it was, but I think it was like 15 minutes. It was long. Anyways, in watching that, I had such a profound experience around understanding why our people engage in what I had previously judged as, Buffalo Bill BS, you know,
Hmm.
because I realized that the nations in, that were hosting the Olympics negotiated for that time. I'm sure they negotiated for every minute.
Hmm.
And the world watched, and then at a very deep personal level, after about 10 minutes of watching, I thought, okay, that's enough, quit looking at me, quit looking, don't look at me, like it's
Hmm.
too much, it's too much. We're so not used to being seen, you
Yeah.
know and so I've changed my views on cultural tourism, and I see the value in it, in terms of creating relationship with people who want to relate with us within our lands. And I think that's a whole space where we could also, instead of having these silos, we could also look at, the healing your father did, from what he went through. I would guess, I haven't read his book yet, but I would guess that much of that happened on the land. That
Oh yeah.
much of reclaiming and healing himself and standing strong again, that all happens on the land. And the land does that for I go I we have my husband and I have had a camp for years, and like when we go down to the Nakana, just being there, for longer than a week, eh? Just being there for 10 weeks sometimes, in 1999 and 2000, we were there from April till September with all our kids, and creating that different experience with the land is very, creates strong, we have strong kids.
I think we've lost our connection to the land, uh, generally,
Mm,
and that's and then in the over the years, because we were placed on little postage stamps of reserves. You're literally like removed from the land.
yeah.
And I find that as we become aware of our connection to the land, it's really our meditation place. For me, I used to sit in a blind when I was hunting geese, and you'd sit there the entire day looking for geese and just sitting there.
Mm,
And that's the place where you share stories, you learn from your uncles about different things that your parents won't tell you. You have good conversations, and you just sit there and look around. And I'm finding that everybody needs to meditate in some way, and then that's
mm,
that balance between the crazy world and just calming down a little bit. And
yeah,
that's where I think we've lost a lot of that connection to the
yeah.
land. And I think that the people that are going through their healing journeys, they'll find their healing in the land just by
Mm,
being out there. They'll
mm,
feel our ancestors, right? If you can
ah,
feel your ancestors, then you sort of understand your place in the world again. Then you can go back out there and do your thing, right?
mhm. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, so many stories are popping in my mind. One time we had this elder from a neighboring Tlingit community come down to our camp, and he'd never been down there in his whole life. Like he'd never been. And Brian took him out on the boat and took him way down towards the Taku, and then he came back, and I used to call him uncle, and he came in the house, and I said to him, "So uncle, what do you think? How do you feel?" And he said, "Oh boy," he said, "my spirit never touched those mountains for so long." And I thought,
Mhm.
okay, in this body, this guy's never been here, but he's relating to this place that is a part of his identity in a generational, the spirit that's in me was here before and never touched these mountains for a long time. I was like so moved. I was like, oh my goodness, that. And of course, he didn't objectify it and analyze his statement or all that. That's my mind, but that's our knowingness, like you're saying about our ancestors. We may not know it, but our ancestors are still there. And
Well, people can feel it by watching your videos
oh,
that you shared. Is like when you're preparing the fish, or that one where that polar bear, that grizzly bear was coming close to your camp. It's
Yeah.
like people watch that and they just feel like they're there,
I
and so they
know.
could at least for a little bit feel like they're part of it, and then they
Yeah.
could feel their soul sort of filling
Yeah.
up a little bit,
Yeah.
and that's why it's so
I've
important that
I've actually been told that the one woman in Manitoba who's a paraplegic now, well, I should maybe that's the wrong label. Anyway, she's in a wheelchair and
mm,
she watches all our videos. I didn't know her before, and she's Indigenous, and she contacted me and said, please don't ever stop because I remember when I could walk, and I remember when I was on the land with my family, and it kind of makes me want to cry. She said, when I watch, just what you said, Shannon, when I watch, then I'm walking again. I'm there again, eh? And
that's
it's
right.
really important. It's really important. Yeah.
And it adds to their soul and to their life that they're living, and it allows them to be at more peace from where they
Yeah.
are, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
That's all the connection that we know is there still as Indigenous people. We live connected whether we want to acknowledge it or not.
for
That's
sure,
why
for sure.
that's why it hurts so much when we're in conflict with each other because we know we're connected, eh? Yeah.
That's
I
right.
wanted to
That's right.
segue back to something you'd said earlier. Like I was sharing with you off camera, I do my best to be. I'm a curious person. Like I've always been so nosy, and
Hmm.
so I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I try to find things that I don't know about, and listen to those. And um, the whole idea around microloans, like in India, I think it is when I was listening to one, maybe a podcast or something where like a small loan, I'm just going to make this up because I don't remember exactly what they said, but like a
Sure.
small loan of $5,000 to a woman in India, it changed everything, like generationally, because she took that $5,000 and created a business that would work for her, to expand on what she was already doing and knew how to do. And so, does the IFA, Indigenous, what is it called again?
Indigenous financial institutions.
Yeah, IFI. Does it do any microfinancing at all, especially for women? I'm thinking of. There's so many women out there with, oh man, I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here. Hang on.
I'll
Um, you
stop
know,
you then.
okay.
We do, we do, we
Okay.
do have microfinancing, and it is a popular tool all across the world, and it actually used to be a popular tool back in the 80s and 90s. And I remember having one myself when I was a student, and I
Okay.
started a business in Fort Albany, where
Okay.
I'm from, and it was only $1,500 over the summer. And those
Okay.
little nuggets really is planting a seed of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to bring that all back for sure. So we
Okay.
have a women's micro loan program. I'm I'm
Wow.
launching I'm launching a youth program that's also going to have a micro loan element to it because I
Oh,
really find it's important to catch the youth on a summer sort of part-time basis because they're going to go to school or they're going to get into another business. But that planting the seed is so important. And I'm sure we're going to do one with the tourism as well, micro lending, because it plants the seed. And the one with the women, it's because they're part-time or they're doing it because they've got so many responsibilities as mothers and families and other things that they have to try to earn income in other ways. And the criteria and the standard of having a full-time venture and taking a big loan just doesn't work for them. So having these
mhm.
micro ability to start it off quietly and then it grows from there, we found that that's so much more valuable. Internationally, my wife has been giving money to this place called Kiva. So it's an online platform where you give a little bit of money, and internationally, these small she makes sure that there's an indigenous group that are starting that need to buy a goat or they need to buy some
Mm.
startup capital seeds and do a farming. Like it's small stuff, but it goes a long way.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
we need to reintroduce that to our community because
Yeah.
that gets things going, right?
Yeah, like the women on my reserve, they often have what they call plate sales. So
Mm,
they know when there's money coming into the community and people, there's no restaurants really. There's a couple maybe restaurants in my community, but people want a treat when they get a little bit they know when the cash is coming into the community. And so they have plate sales and they just cook one thing that they're really good at cooking,
yeah,
but they're just doing that in their kitchens. Like if they could get money to, I don't know what the hell they would want money for, but that's the kind of thinking to stabilize what's already there,
for
um,
sure, for
or
sure.
even, I'm still going to say what I was going to say. The tangent wasn't about the micro, but it was about
Oh,
our women are, that's great. I love that you interrupt me. Our women who are business women already who are beading like this. Wait, I'm
Oh
laughing.
yeah, yeah,
This was beaded by Becky Ann. And, I don't think she charged me enough for it, but I'm a super regular customer. So I
yeah.
let it go with that. But, um, because our women, because of the patriarchy and colonization, what women create is considered craft
Yeah,
and not art.
yeah.
And that's code for I'm not paying you as much for that. Like that
Hmm.
painting behind you is art, you know?
Oh yeah.
While we do have women who are visual artists, most of our women are creating beadwork. And when they sell, like I have paid what I should pay for some pieces of beading art because that's what the woman asked. And I wanted it. And I was
Hmm.
like, good, this is great. You have the confidence to sell that as a piece of art. It's every piece is original. And so some of these young and older women who are doing the bead art, I think could really benefit from some microfinancing. Yeah.
Oh, for sure, and we'll have it available.
Yeah.
We're right now in the process of making sure that the government maintains the support for the NACA network. We're probably on the last 2 months of our current agreement. We're making sure that they recognize how important we are to the community and how long we've been doing this. And we've already started seeing that some of our IFIs, people are leaving because they don't have any certainty on that funding going forward to support their work, and we're making sure that the government knows how important entrepreneurship and how Indigenous prosperity is important to Canadian prosperity, because I always say Canada won't have it without Indigenous prosperity. I tell everybody that just because we have 300 plus court cases affirm our rights and title to our own territories,
Yepper.
that nobody's going to come and just set up shop anymore without engaging and ensuring that we're sharing and
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, we could talk forever. And I was just looking at the time and we've almost gone 45 minutes already. The time flies, the hour flies. So in the
Yeah.
time that we have left, I wanted to ask you, in the 7 years that you've been in this position as the CEO for NACA,
Yeah.
what have been the greatest challenges that you've faced? And this is a brave and
Uh,
conversation, so be brave.
Well, I think just in our own communities, having everybody work together, because the standard approach that has been put on to Indigenous people is we go from a paternalistic sort of mentality that continues to exist right now with the government knowing what's right for us, right? So
Mhm.
they'll say, time for applications, tell us what you need for this program we developed for you. Like that still exists
Mhm.
today, and that just pisses me off all the time, because we know what we need. We need to
Mhm.
just we need to be given the opportunity to do that. And the way the government does everything as a pilot project, it's like, oh, we don't know if we can commit to that long term. So we'll do it as a pilot project. And of course, it dies with the next election. So nothing is sustainable. The Indigenous Services Canada puts less than 1% into economic initiatives. It's mostly a social spend, and that's very important. But unless you invest a little bit into economic development to ensure we have every Indigenous business out there that'll provide revenue back to our own economy, then we'll never get out of what we're in right now, which is a social trap. We need to invest in economic development so that we have the institutions to support entrepreneurs on the ground. We have institutions to support our rights and title, have institutions to make sure that we have the right land base within our areas. Because having an economy and this talk about self-government means nothing without our surety to the land, and that we
Mhm.
can plan from having that land, because no government exists without any land, and we don't have any land right now. Everything that we have, this is how funny it is. So any nation right now that is trying to do well for themselves by buying land near the city so that their nation is closer to the market and they can earn some revenue, they're paying tens of millions of dollars for that land. Then they're turning right around and handing it back to the crown to turn it into a reserve. Now, how does that make any sense whatsoever? Just to get the tax advantage, you're paying for your own land, which you have rights and title to, giving it back to the crown and signing it off and giving it to them so that you can have some sort of I don't know. I
Yeah,
just
it's
it's
where I think this is a really good thing you brought up in the last 10 minutes of our talk here, but it's because where our people are at right, I think, it's just my opinion. People who can work, that want to work and take advantage of the personal tax exemption that we have if we work for an employer on reserve and are living on reserve ourselves, and we can work tax free. That benefit, so few of us, like the people, Canadians think we all are get everything tax free. We should, but that's not what happens. I go to Walmart or I go anywhere off the reserve, I'm paying tax, I'm contributing to the country. So I think that's where our governments are at, is that it's stuck in that poverty cycle, stuck in that cycle. And I loved what you said about the source of the money, because I'm always telling white people, like, the money that is sent to the reserves is really out of the social safety net of this country. It's the same kind of money that you'll see in any low income neighborhood in any city. It's it's nothing more, it's nothing different. CMHC housing, our dumb dental plan, our, like, it's all the same as people on social assistance get in the cities, all people. And
so it's not special money at all.
it's not
It's
special money at all.
it's just
They just
minimum. Yeah,
they
yeah.
just channel it over to the Indian envelope and call it Indian. And then they pat themselves on the back saying they're looking after us. That's not what the intention was at treaty time.
No,
At
no,
treaty
definitely
time,
not.
it was to share, the benefit of the resources. There's lots, there's enough for everyone. But that's not what's happened. That's not what's happened. We've just been captured into this, and it's big business. That's the other thing. I'm sure well, this is all you've ever since I've known you, you're working in this area. Like, it's big business. The more screwed up we are in Canada, the more money we provide for Canada. Because all of the jails have employees that are paying their mortgages and putting their kids through university or college. And all of the CFS, all of the foster kids in care, there are more of our children in care today than were ever in the residential schools.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's big money. And then the little peeping sound, oh yeah, we want you to take over. Bullshit is what I have to say about that. It's
You're
not.
very brave.
I don't care. I
you,
don't. I don't work for the man. I work for
you know,
myself.
you, you know, you know
And
where our nations are buying up land and transferring it to the crown. They're only
mm,
doing that because of this whole Indian Act problem. But
yeah.
if they move beyond the Indian Act, retained ownership of those properties, but then retain tax incentives through different mechanisms, then they can maintain the ownership and leverage of that land while
Oh my
retaining the tax benefits. Because
God.
if that's really what it is at the end of the day, I think we can move beyond the Indian Act in
Yeah.
certain areas where we're just holding on to this thing. But really, we got to work around it and work through it, and then just create a new mechanism on top of it, because the mentality has to be sustainability long term. Let's get there, because our problem is getting more and more challenging every year because we're growing so fast, but the government resources are getting a lot less.
Yes. And the thing is about what you're saying is, it's not to I know that the critics of that view would say, oh yeah, well, we'll just finalize colonization for ourselves and incorporate into the business realm. No, it's a business decision. Like, I not a corporate lawyer, but I do know a tiny bit about corporate law. And the corporate tax incentives are huge. Why do you think
Hmm.
all rich people have corporations?
That's right.
you know
That's right.
because they don't pay any damn taxes, that's why, or very little.
Yeah,
And so, if we what I hear you saying is, if we would start realizing that who we are historically, and who we still are in our souls, is that we are independent, and that
that's right.
we could have a business, and not as an and. I didn't hear you say one or the other. I heard you say and, do
There's
the
a
thing.
there's a lot of ands. The
Yeah.
we have rights entitled to our territories. What we need to do is solidify those rights and their inherent rights to our own territories, so we can make decisions, investment decisions, partner decisions, and future revenues from that. But buying land anywhere we want should be okay, and having incentives to enable the economy to grow needs to happen, because the government did that for the Canadians after Second World War with tax incentives, with training subsidies, with granting. We weren't ready at that point. There was a generational lag. We were prevented from even voting at the time. But
Yeah.
now we're in a place where we're ready to take advantage of creating economies. So we have a lot of ands that we should be
Yeah.
adding to what we already have.
Yeah. Oh, I should have wrote. I had a thought, that big thought that came, and it just went right through my head. Um, Gosh. Oh, wish it would come back. I
It
know,
happens to me
right?
all the time. Happens to me all the time.
Oh man, I was sitting with this elder one time, and we were talking like you and I are talking, and that happened. She said, "It went right through my head." The knowledge is all out there. It comes in. We're a conduit, eh?
Yeah.
But the whole business thing. Oh, I know what I was going to say. It came back. Thank you. So if do you think that private money, people out there with the money who are looking for investments for whatever reasons they're looking for them, whether it's social or just to make money, or they want to feel good when they go to sleep at night because they're helping the Indians,
Yeah.
do you think that if a nation said, okay, I have this business plan to do this thing off reserve on the basis of my assertion of title, you know,
Yeah.
would 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 they be willing to? I think they would, if it was a success, if they thought the business could make money, you know, I think they would partner with us, because in the end, we would end up, if we needed to, going to court to assert title over, if it turned out, if the corporate tax breaks weren't enough to generate profit and jobs, we still have our title, which is underneath the crown's title. The
I
crown,
think
our, you know,
in the last 20 years, there's been such a decline in foreign investment in Canada because Indigenous people have been asserting our rights and title. They've been asserting our place for sharing, so that it's created a big uncertainty for foreign investment. Now, in order to bring that certainty back to foreign investment, the corporate world is moving towards engaging with the community more, recognizing these 300 cases and saying, well, we're going to have to work with them. So
yeah,
we do have that leverage to work and seek investment in our community. So I think one of the organizations I founded on the is the Indigenous Impact Investment Circle 3IC. That's going to work to identify sources of capital in the world that can work with our communities by ensuring that the capital is social capital, that is good capital, as opposed to those that are seeking to make money off of our communities. So it's
mm-hmm,
going to be creating those good connections
mm-hmm.
where they're in a trust circle, so that
That's
our
right.
communities can rely on something that'll
Mm,
work.
yeah. No, I went there with you right away. So I think that, it's good to hear that you've got your eye on foreign investment. And this is the kind of thing that I don't think, I'm not really a conspiracy theorist, but my dad used to say money talks and bullshit walks, Scruff. And
Hmm.
I see the actions of the Canadian government, and they talk a good game. Look at even the murdered and missing women. I rode my damn Harley for how many days,
I
me and
remember that.
Shannin.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, oh my God. And the report came out, and there's 231 recommendations, and almost 5 years later, only two have been implemented. Only
Houston
two.
Reconciliation TRC.
No, the murdered and missing, the National
Oh, the
Inquiry.
more. Oh, okay. Okay.
Only two out of
Oh.
231. That's pathetic. It's pathetic. It's criminal. And so, but what's in the news all the time is, oh, we're trying so hard. We're just doing all this stuff. And yet the burden is on the oppressed to continue to say, hello, I'm now we've how do you say that, commemorated and memorialized, and like we're all wearing beautiful pins and earrings, because what else are we going to do? Canada's not doing anything. There's some problem. If only two out of 231 recommendations, and it's the same in the business field where you work.
That's right.
Canada has always said, oh, no, we want a partner, but it doesn't happen. So it sounds like you're making some little bit of headway, and I'm really glad you're there. and it's tough. It's
It's
tough.
it's it's a tough world, and I think everybody has to open themselves up to partnerships. And
Yes.
partnerships are not just in Canada anymore; they're global. We the organizations in Canada that are Indigenous organizations, economic organizations, are starting to work together closer now because we recognize that we have to work together. We can't compete with each other anymore. So we created a strategy. It's called 107 Calls to Prosperity. It's
Mhm.
niestrategy.ca. You can read all 107, and they cover land, people, infrastructure, and revenue, so that we're thinking about all the things that would make our community hum with economic activity. But it's going to take a long time. Like you said, only 2 out of the murdered missing Indigenous women. TRC, how many have we done? All these strategies. The Royal Commission is still a very relevant document. It was a lot of work,
Totally.
and this NIES strategy kind of took and reaffirmed some of those requirements of making sure that our people are ready for the economy, but everybody has to keep on working together.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, huh, I know that whole global thing, being connected globally, even for somebody like me who I know I feel my own power. I know I'm powerful, and people tell me
Mhm.
that. I know that. It's not bragging. It's just, I don't know, the sky's blue. It's just what it is. And so I've been being pushed to move towards a more global conversation. And I've been so always resistant, it's like, no, 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 I had to do a lot of personal healing, like, what will people think, and blah blah blah. But I just joined a global women's organization, actually, and they screen you because not anybody can join, at that global conversation level. And I got an email last week that said, we've looked at your application and we're approving your membership. The
Right
fee is
on.
this, the fee is this, pay this. And I was like, no, I gotta pay to go talk.
But you
you
find
gotta,
that,
you
our
got,
Indigenous people are so similar across the globe. I'm like, let's connect with our Indigenous brothers and sisters around the globe. Some of them are way ahead, some of them are behind, and we can raise ourselves up and help each other. And imagine connecting our own capital and our own capacity and our own power, political power. We're going to be
yeah,
powerful in the future.
I'm with you. That's why we
Yeah,
were both on that First Nations governance board, because
mm,
we've been a stand for our people our whole life. And that
that's
women's
right.
organization I joined is all women. It's not it's like all women. So that's a new space for me because I'm always just in the space of Indigenous women, So we have to stretch ourselves. Every single human being, we have to stretch ourselves and be brave and go places where we've never been. I sound like the Star Trek show.
Deadly Cookums
Yeah.
International, eh?
Okay, I'm going to give you the chance to wrap up, and then I want to make a big announcement about the deadly cookums. Never mind. Okay, go ahead.
Well, just thank you for giving me the opportunity. I want to make sure that everybody knows that we are still actively trying to make sure that we have the products and services for businesses on the ground through our Indigenous Financial Institution Network. We launched an online literacy and board game. We have the Dawei Business Hub here in Ottawa that we hope our IFIs will expand across the country so that support can be right there on the ground. So we're doing a
Awesome.
lot of things. The Indigenous Growth Fund, and any sort of questions or any ideas, just send them right to me.
Cool. So you email me, please, all the links you want. And I have a very kind young man, white man in Alberta who hardly charges me anything. And he will put those links in and he does the timestamps for me because I'm working on developing my YouTube channel so that Joe Rogan can just move over because Joan Jackson can.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Right
so
on.
I wanted to say in closing two things. First, Roxanne Shuttleworth is a businesswoman, Métis and First Nation businesswoman, and an amazing artist. And she put in the deadly. So for those of you listening who don't know, on December 12th, 2020, a lot of what I do is it comes to me. It's not me. I just take the action. And so that morning I woke up and the thought came, you should start a private group, Facebook group called Deadly Cookums. And I thought, what a good idea. I know how to do that. And so I did it. And then then, and I sent out the invite to a few cookums I know, my age, women my age, and the next they automatically invited women, and it was just like boom, 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 and now we're just short of 28,000, and that
Goodness.
started this on December 12th, 2020, and we have because you can look at the stats in your Facebook when you're the creator of the group. We have consistently had a 60% or higher engagement rate. Now, I don't
Wow.
know any other, I mean, we all join Facebook groups because our friends send us the link and we never go look, but it's just humming in there. And then I have a small team of women, cookums and aunties that help me administer it. And I just say there's only one rule: don't be an asshole, because we all know when we're being an asshole. This is space to be who you are, and if you're an asshole, don't be a better asshole. And so
Good
just
advice. Good advice.
be yourself. Be yourself. So Roxanne posted in the Deadlies the other day, okay, Joan Jack, I've listened to all 25 of your podcasts. I loved every single one of them. When's the next one? And I was like, oh, I got to get back at it, because this is all volunteer work. I don't get paid for any of this. I just do it because I'm called to. And then, offside, she messaged me and she said, hey, can you have more than one guest? And I said, yeah. She said, have you ever watched The View? I said, yeah, I have. She said, we need to have brave Indigenous conversations with deadly cookums. I was like, oh my God.
Oh, wow. That'd be amazing.
So the first one
Amazing.
is coming January 26th. Mark your calendars. And it's going
Okay.
to be at noon Central Time. So wherever you are, move it backwards, and it'll be broadcast on all my social media, and then you can share it to your social media. And our core panelists are Dr. Harris is a Cree woman from Cold Lake First Nation, and she's very outspoken. Oh my God. Of course, Roxanne, because this was her idea, and we're all really outspoken. She's a strong businesswoman. And Becky Big Canoe from Ontario, another practical sovereignist. That woman built her own straw bale home 25 years ago, and she still lives in it, and me. And so we're going to have the introductory session. Then we're going to do it once a month on the last Friday of every month. And our first guest next month is going to be Tina Keeper. And so we're going to have a guest. We're
Nice.
going to have a guest every month. So I'm so excited about that. And then
That's
the
awesome.
last thing is I'm all about my earrings. And so these are another Becky Ann piece. So you can find her on Facebook. Just search Becky Ann. It's really simple. Say, I got your name from Joan Jack, and her beading is so amazing. Okay. Thank you so much, Shannin. Are you going to do something else?
I was going to show you. My wife made this. This is
Oh my
Pink
goodness.
Buffalo. Her business
Oh,
is Pink Buffalo, so she made this for me.
Pink Buffalo. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you email me her link too, and I'll put it in.
Okay.
We'll put it in the podcast.
Ego
Okay.
de. Que
Okay.
chimigwech.
Yeah. Again.
What's it?